out first and then log back in. Hopefully that should fix it. That seems to fix most issues when a PowerPoint is starting. So please try that first. Okay, so first things first, the photos this week. Okay, so for today is mostly around, we've had actually quite a lot sent to us, haven't we? And Kat and I have picked some of our favorites from Twitter as well. So it's a bit of a mix. We're really sorry if we haven't included yours in it. But if we did, I think we would be here for most of the day. So we're very sorry, but we do appreciate it. And I have to say personally, and I probably speak for the rest of the team as well, my favorite point in the day is just sort of logging into Twitter at about midday to seeing all your amazing photos. And then Libby, our team administrator, sending us all the photos that you sent us. So thank you so much. That's probably the best part. So here we have some examples of schools that have sent us in pictures, and they've been eagerly awaiting the lessons they've been saying every day of the week. So that's fantastic. So thanks so much, Gatehouse School, Howwood Primary 6 and Max Welton Primary 6. It's really lovely. And I'm sure you're here. So here's a wee shout out to you. Who else have we got? We've got Garrow Hill Primary 7. So they were practicing their note taking for their climate change topic, and they will hopefully, fingers crossed, in a few weeks to come, be recreating some of the experiments that we've been doing this week. So that's great as well. Thank you so much, folks. Deer Park P7 pupils went on a litter pick to Gartmore Dam. They were really disappointed, which is sad to say, because they found a lot of cigarettes, cans, glass and plastic bottles, and unsurprisingly, or they were slightly surprised to find some socks, which is probably best not to ask how they got there, I think. What else? We've got Tayport Primary School, who did their Dear World Leaders exercise. So this is an example from Layla that was posted on Twitter. So well done. That was fantastic. These resources are still in the folder for you, which you can download and use at any point, all the way up until COP26. This is from Sandwood Primary in P7A. So what they were doing, they were feeling inspired from our food waste workshop, and they wanted to create posters to highlight this issue within their school. And we've got some fantastic artists that appears in Sandwood Primary. So well done, because they all look absolutely fantastic. Hopefully we can, I can't tell from the picture, but hopefully we can get them laminated and up as soon as possible. Here's an absolute lovely one from Forgan Denny, P1 to P4, set out for their One Planet picnic, and it looks like it was a huge success. You've got some fantastic weather. I wish that was here, but it looks like you had a fantastic time, so well done. And these are some other ones that we found on Twitter, which we really liked. This was from Claire's experiment yesterday. This is at Cross Hill Primary School and Early Years Centre. So you can see there with the iceberg, or I'm not sure if that's an iceberg or a glacier, we'll have to see. But they're recording their data and going to upload it to a graph, which is a fantastic idea. So hopefully they're measuring it maybe every hour or so, and maybe highlighting how much water that's collected at the bottom. That's a great idea to measure the results over a longer period. What else? We've got primary 5 and 6 in Sykeside Primary, doing their flapjacks, which they did with Eve on Wednesday. So that's fantastic to see as well. Really nice. And this is one that I like because it was mine. This is from Ballyvannock Primary, hope I'm pronouncing that right, doing their bicarb experiment. So this is primary 5 to primary 7. And once they mastered it, they were able to show PG 6, 7 how to do it, which is great. So that's what sort of myself, Kat, and all the presenters have been saying this week. You know, one of the best things you can do from all of this is to pass that learning on. You know, you now have the information we have, so pass it on. That's such a good thing to do. So well done for doing that. And this is mine. So for those of you who are asking, this is my very sad experiment looking here. It's been 5 days and my balloon does not look happy. So what I was able to do, I did this quickly this morning. So I've been measuring the temperature on my thermometer every morning at the same time. For those of you wondering as well, this is the This is the control experiment. So I wasn't able to find a yellow one, but the blue does represent the blue balloon, so that's the control, and the orange is the CO2. So as you can see, it's pretty much been a degree warmer every day, but this morning it was only half a degree. And my theory behind that is that because this isn't airtight, I think the gas has just been slowly seeping out over the course of 4 or 5 days. That's my theory. I'm not sure, but it would be lovely for you to tweet us if you've been able to do an experiment, if you've made a graph at all, just what your results are and if they're different, because maybe we could compare notes and see why yours is different to mine, which would be lovely to see. But yeah, I was able to do that on Microsoft Word. It was quite quick and quite easy. It might take you, 5 or 10 minutes to figure out the knobs and buttons of it, but it's not too difficult. Doesn't take long. So yeah, I'm going to be sad to see this go from the bottom of my desk, but hey ho. Okay, your questions. We got some absolute crackers in yesterday, so let's crack on. So first question was from Primary 6 at Milnes Primary. How are glaciers formed? So I'm not going to go into huge detail because what actually happens, you'll learn about this a lot in geography when you go to secondary school. But what I can tell you is the main what's the word? The main ideas, I suppose, behind glaciers. So glaciers are made up of fallen snow that over many years compress into large thickened ice masses. They form when snow remains in one location long enough for it to transform into ice. What makes them unique compared to a frozen lake or a frozen sea or something like that is their ability to move. Okay, because they're huge. The sheer mass of a glacier is normally humongous. So you've got to think of them like very, very slow rivers. And what's even more important to understand that because we're talking about climate change and environment all this week, every known glacier in the world is currently shrinking due to that increased heat. So that's important to know as well, especially talking about or referring to Claire's lesson yesterday when we're talking about what happens to the water from these glaciers. We're going to look at Claire's experiment in a minute. Okay, is this next one? What happens when water goes down the plug? This was a good question, and I had to get a graphic to show specifically because even I in my head, I think I know, but I needed sort of a bit of guidance to show what actually happens. So the first step is the water gets taken away. It goes down the plug, and it goes to a screening. It's a screening process. So the first stage. They remove large objects that may block or damage the equipment or might be unsightly if allowed back into the river. And this could include items that should never be put down the drain in the first place, such as nappies, face wipes, sanitary items, cotton buds, things like that. Okay, things like this should never be put down the drain, but I'm sure you're absolutely all aware of that. From the primary, secondary, and final treatment, this is all sort of a sieving process. So if you think of a sieve and how large items get stuck in it if the holes are too small, that's essentially what it does. You're eventually just from that primary, secondary, and final treatment, you're getting the waste down to almost micromolecules so that there's no objects or no large objects in there at all. And from that final treatment, they separate the good bacteria from the bad, and that bad bacteria turns into a sludge. And that's where it goes on to number 6, which is a sludge treatment. And this is the process is treated and is actually put to good use because most of this sludge is recycled to agricultural, to farmland, so that farmers can use it as fertilizer. But companies also use it as a biosource to generate energy in a large variety of different ways. So that's what they do with the bad stuff. But then the good stuff is then just pumped back into the river. So hopefully that sort of sums that up quite well. What's also quite good is that we have an activity which is in our extra resources folder, which is called Build Your Own Water Filter. So that's a really good example of how just you with simple household objects can build your own water filter. And it actually works really, really well. So I'd recommend giving that a shot. It's in the SharePoint folder for yesterday's resources under extra resources. So hopefully you can find that. Okay, this next question was pretty tricky. It's how old is water? And I went to our resident Wikipedia page, which we call Eve, who you met on Wednesday. And I said, Eve, how old is water? And she came back to me with a couple theories. So I've put them down, which, so one theory is that at least water is at least as old as the Earth, so 4.6 billion years old, so almost as old as me, and was formed while the Earth and the solar system were forming themselves. I'm not really 4.6 billion years old. Another theory is that it was too hot back in the very beginning, so it may have arrived, water may have arrived to our planet about 3.8 billion years ago. From collisions with the Kuiper Belt. So the Kuiper Belt is an area just outside our solar system, which is absolutely chock-a-block filled with comets and different ice bodies. It's like a big ice donut around our solar system, sort of. And what happens if an asteroid crashes into it, then the water could have come roaring to our planet. And that's one theory of how it might have gotten there. But what's extremely important to remember about water is that it is a finite resource. There is only a certain amount of it, and we have to share this between us and with all future life. So we have a responsibility to keep it clean. Okay, good. And Eve also mentioned, which I thought was quite interesting as well, that we have been drinking the same water as our grandparents all the way back to our dinosaurs, which is so interesting to think about because, like I said, we have the same water, it just changes form. And it's just the water cycle. It goes round and round and round. So the water that we have here has been here all along. So hopefully that answers your question. The last question we have, what is the difference between an ocean and a sea? This was handed in by Clyde Primary, P5B, but the question was actually asked by Matthew in P6. Well, Matthew, it was a really good question. The size is the main difference. Okay, oceans are much larger. There are many seas in the world, but only 5 oceans. The seas are mainly enclosed by land at some point, but oceans are vast. And actually, there's only 5 oceans in the world, like I've said. Maybe you in your class right now or afterwards could have a go and see if you can name all 5. This is a picture that Clyde Primary sent with us as well. And they also tagged in the picture that while they were watching this, they saw a plastic bag float by the window on the 2nd floor, which is quite sad to see, but it's quite a powerful image to imagine. So thank you so much for that, Matthew and Clyde Primary. And here we go before we go into the quiz. So I've got notes here of what Claire has said. So what she said, Shark Island, which was the land ice, if you can remember, that rose by 0.8 centimeters. The Seal Island, so that was with the sea ice, the iceberg, had no rise at all. So she says, at Shark Island, the glacier rapidly melted and fell off, unfortunately knocking the house into shark-infested waters. Oh dear. The giant chicken has taken over and now rules the land. Oh God, this sounds awful. The explorer has been rescued and taken to nearby Seal Island. More importantly, there was a rise of 0.8 centimeters in sea level. In Seal Island, the frozen seawater also melted with the warm temperature, but did not have a rise in sea level. This is because the ice was already in the water. The volume of water displaced as ice is about the same as the volume of water added to the ocean when the ice melts. So because the ice is already in the water, just in a different form, it doesn't change the volume of it. But it's only when you add to that that it makes a difference. So if it's coming from land to the sea, that's when you're adding to it. So as a result, sea levels do not rise significantly when sea ice melts, but melting glaciers, large sheets of ice and snow that we've just talked about from the question at the beginning, on land do add more water to Earth's oceans. As temperature rises due to climate change, glaciers melt faster and water runs into the ocean, causing sea levels to rise. Just like I said in the beginning, every glacier right now is actually shrinking because it's melting. So all that melting glacier is going into our oceans, and that's something we want to stop quickly. Okay, quick quiz questions. Here we go. What is one thing you can do at home to tackle climate change? Hopefully after this week now, you're starting to get a lot of ideas. What is one thing you can do at school to tackle climate change? And what is the name of the meeting about climate change that will be in Glasgow next month? Okay, well done. So remember your answers. We'd love to know. Keep sending us social media pictures, everything that you're doing at KSB Scotland. It is honestly the best points of our day. I think I speak for the whole team when I say this, and it has been so nice to see them all. Things to remember as well, just the same stuff. We still have access to these resources in the SharePoint, the class climate action plan, the One Planet picnic, Dear World Leaders, and the evaluation form. So hopefully you can still access these, and even if you haven't done any of these by today, you can absolutely take them forward and continue to use them of your own choice. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So I'm going to hand you over to Josh, and like I said, we're going to have a happy end to the week. Josh is our resident positive life advice mentor, and he's going to show you some great stuff that's happening in Scotland. Take it away, Joshua.
Thank you very much, Jamie. That's such a kind introduction. I'm just going to be sharing my screen with you now, so you just have to bear with me for a few seconds. But whilst I'm doing that, it's been so great to see all of the amazing work that everyone has been doing. I am the resident positive force that is in KSB. And whilst we're waiting for this PowerPoint to load, I just have a very simple poll, which I'm going to ask either Jamie or Kat to put to you. And it's just asking one question, and that is, have you started thinking about your action plan yet? And it's a simple yes or no poll. So it's not that one. That's not the poll that I'm thinking of. The one I'm thinking of is, have you started looking or thinking about your action plan yet? You can just stick your answer in the chat based on what you've done this week. There we go. There we go. So very simple poll to get us started. That's okay, Kat. Already seeing some answers coming in, which is excellent to see. And lots of people are saying yes, which is, yeah, really, really encouraging, and a big well done to you. It's completely fine if you haven't started thinking about it yet. I appreciate that you've had a really busy week with lots of things to do, but this is kind of the perfect opportunity. If you haven't started yet, this is the perfect opportunity to start having a think about it now, because what I have the pleasure of doing today is basically going through a load of really amazing things which are happening in and around Scotland and also the world. All of these amazing things which are happening to try and tackle climate change. So we've kind of learnt about how animals are being impacted. We've learned about the relationship between our oceans and climate change, as well as our diet. But like I said, now we're just going to focus on some of the really positive things which are happening, which are bringing about really amazing change in our country and in the world. Now, Jamie and Kat have been absolutely excellent presenters. Jamie, he thinks he's out of the woods, but he's not quite yet. He's just got one more important job to do before we finish, and that is he's going to take us on a tour of Scotland to see all of the amazing things that are happening in this country. So he's going to begin by taking us off to Orkney. So off we go. There we go. So he's taken us to Orkney, and this is what Orkney looks like. It's a collection of islands just off the northern tip of Scotland. It's really, really beautiful. I had the pleasure of going there and teaching over a year ago now, and it's absolutely stunning. There is a video link that I've included on the top of this slide, which obviously you'll get with the resources. After this session, I would really recommend just watching that video. It's quite short, but it's talking about all of the amazing things that are happening in Orkney, especially around renewable energy. But I'm just going to talk about a few of them to you now. So the first thing I'm going to highlight is wind power. So those big wind turbines which turn around in the wind and generate electricity. 1 in 12 people who live in Orkney have their own wind turbine. And that means that they are generating loads and loads and loads of renewable electricity through wind, which is just a really amazing fact. Orkney can actually generate way more electricity than it needs, especially through wind. And I think in the not too distant future, it's probably going to be providing electricity to mainland Scotland, which is really exciting to see. Now, another amazing thing that's happening in Orkney is in August 2020, they tested Scotland's first electrical powered passenger plane. So lots of students and teachers often have to hop between the islands to get to lessons and classes. And they have a plane which also acts as a kind of postal service and carries supplies between the islands. And this plane now has an electrical engine inside it, which will hopefully mean that there is a smaller carbon footprint associated with flying, which again is just a really amazing piece of kind of engineering to see happening. Orkney's also got some of the highest uptake of electric vehicles in the UK. So lots and lots and lots of people on the islands have an electric vehicle, which they then charge from the electricity which is generated by either the wind turbines or by wave power. So they've got a really high uptake of these electric vehicles, which again is another amazing thing to see. And like I said earlier, they actually generate more electricity than they need. They tend to generate about 120 or 130% of the electricity they need. So they've often got about 20 or 30% excess electricity. And what they use that for is they use that actually to make something called hydrogen. So it's a bit of a small picture there, but this is one of the main harbours in Orkney, and you can see a tiny little blue box in the left-hand side of that picture. And that blue box does something really clever. It takes seawater, takes it out of the sea, and through some very clever engineering, it turns that seawater into oxygen and into hydrogen. Now, we can burn hydrogen, much like how we burn petrol and diesel. But when we burn petrol and diesel, we give off carbon dioxide, which is this greenhouse gas that we don't really want. But when you burn off hydrogen, we just create water, which will go into the atmosphere and then fall down back to Earth as rain. And so Orkney are managing to use their excess electricity to make hydrogen, which is a much greener fuel which can be burned. Orkney's not alone, though, in generating its electricity through renewable methods. The rest of Scotland is also doing this. And so I've actually got another poll now, which I'd like either Kat or Jamie to load. And this is, how much of Scotland's electricity do you think was generated from renewables in 2020? So you've got 4 options, but how much of Scotland's electricity do you think was generated from renewables in 2020? And we've had a few responses in so far. Getting a few more in. So no one is saying 26% yet. Everyone's being much more positive, optimistic, which is really good to see. So we've got a split between 49%, 72%, and 97%. We've had 130 responses, which is absolutely amazing. So we've got now the main split appears to be between 72% and 97%. And the correct answer, which is so encouraging to see, is that last year Scotland generated 97% of its energy from renewable resources. So 97% of its electricity came from either wind power, wave power, things like that, which is just an absolutely amazing achievement. And it's something that we really should celebrate, because it is a really impressive figure that we as a country are managing to achieve. So that's another really excellent thing which is happening in Scotland. Okay, so I'm now going to move on. We're going to go. Jamie's had a lovely time in Orkney, but I think he wants to go somewhere else. He wants to see somewhere else. So he's going to go from Orkney and he's going to be taking us to Banffshire. I'm not sure if Jamie knows where that is, but we'll find out. Yeah, I think he's got a good idea of where it is. And in Banffshire, he is going to find somewhere called Baldoni Estate. Now, this is a really amazing place. And what they are doing is they're running a project, part of something called Rewilding Britain. And what they're hoping to do is they're hoping to increase the population of native trees. So trees that you would normally find in that area. And these trees can then store CO2 from the atmosphere. They can take that gas out of the atmosphere. And they can also improve the biodiversity, so the range of living things in that 860 acre site. Now, to put that into context, 860 acres, that's about 430 football pitches. So to us, it's quite big, but actually in terms of some of the sizes of the estates that we have in Scotland, it's actually quite a small estate. One really good thing they're doing is that they're involving lots of the local communities in the process. So the people who live in and around that estate are really feeling like their views are being listened to, and they're taking an active role in this rewilding process. So some of the native trees that they could be bringing back, we could have some Scots pine, which is one of my favourite trees. We could have some oak, which is also one of my favourite trees. And unsurprisingly, another one of my favourite trees that they could be bringing back is wild cherry, which has a really beautiful blossom. Now, on their own, these trees are excellent, but because they're there, they can then bring back or entice some other organisms. So the Scots pine is really loved by red squirrels. So we might start seeing some red squirrels coming back because of these trees. The oak trees, they support hundreds of different types of insects, which will obviously be predated upon or preyed on by other animals. And then the wild cherry also supports many types of birds, like this blackbird, which then could in turn support larger birds of prey, such as the beautiful golden eagle. So just like we were learning about the importance of biodiversity when we went around the zoo, adding these native trees to this estate will mean that there is a greater diversity of animals and species in the area. And as well as supporting these species, having some of these trees like the oak and the cherry in the area, they will help the soil become healthier. And if the soil becomes healthier, then again, it can store more carbon, take it out of the atmosphere and store more carbon in it, which is another really great thing that's happening. Now, this isn't the only place where rewilding projects are happening. They're happening all over the UK. This is just a map to show some of them. There's lots more happening, which is, again, a really excellent thing to see. Okay, I think Jamie's getting a bit tired now again. He's wanting to go somewhere fresh. I think he wants to feel the sea breeze on his face. So he's going to take us to the coastal waters of the Isle of Arran. So he's going to be heading out west, not too far from Glasgow, and he's going to find himself in the Isle of Arran. Now, just like we were learning about the oceans and the seas with Claire, there is a community project called the Community of Arran Seabed Trust, which helpfully can be spelt as coast. And this is a community-led project which has successfully stopped harmful fishing practices around the coast of Arran. And what that has meant is that the habitat underwater has been able to regenerate. So You can see here on the right, there's loads more seagrasses and seaweeds coming back, so loads more plants coming back underwater. And then this has led to lots of other aquatic organisms like fish and shellfish and clams coming back as well. And this means that the overall biodiversity, again, the range of living things that we find in that area is improving. And then especially because we've got more plants living under that water, this means that they can absorb more CO2. And again, that means fundamentally that more CO2 is being removed from the atmosphere, and that is having a positive impact on climate change. So that's another really great thing that's happening. Okay, I think Jamie might have got a bit of sunburn there. He enjoyed the coast for a bit, but he's now going to go to his final location. He's going to take us to the absolutely stunning Cairngorms National Park. I don't know if he quite knows where that is. Ah, there we go. We got there in the end. Well done, Jamie. And when he gets to that national park, he's going to find himself looking at this place called Lindsay Croft. Now, a croft is a small piece of land which is quite often farmed in a low intensity way. And this croft is no different, and it is run on something called regenerative principles. And that basically means it's run to make sure that the ground and the environment is as healthy as it can be. And one of the things that they do, you can see a lovely Highland cow there, is they do something called low intensity cattle grazing. And that basically means the farmers just have a very small number of cows. So rather than getting in as many cows into the field as they can, they just have a much smaller number of them. And then this means that there's a much lower environmental impact by the cows. They also use organic farming methods. So they're using fewer pesticides and they're spraying fewer chemicals on the ground, which again means that the ground essentially becomes more healthy. The soil remains healthier. Native species are able to thrive. The soil is pretty healthy there, actually. So if you were to take a handful of that soil, if Jamie was to go and to stick his hand into the ground and pick up that soil, he would find that there are more bacteria in that handful of soil than there are humans on the whole planet. So we've got just over 6 billion humans on the planet. And in that handful of soil, there's going to be at least 6 billion bacteria, probably even more. And that's a really good sign of how diverse that soil is. And therefore, it's a good sign of how healthy that soil is as well. Okay, what they're also doing is the croft owners are running courses to teach students and farmers how they can actually farm sustainably. So that's a really excellent thing. They're taking their knowledge, just like you might be doing, and they're passing it on to help educate others. This isn't the only place, though, that this is happening. We actually now in the UK have a festival. We have a farming festival called Groundswell. The UK is known for having excellent festivals, and they have this festival called Groundswell, which is a farming festival. It's been running for 5 years. It gets sponsored by Kellogg's, who are that company which makes lots of breakfast cereal. And this festival actually sees thousands of attendees learn about sustainable farming methods over the course of a weekend. So it's another amazing sign of things that are happening. You know, lots and lots of people are really interested in this, and we now have a festival which can go and teach people about this, which I just think is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we've spoken about some of the great work being carried out by organisations in and around Scotland, but we're now going to go from large organisations down to individual people, and there's lots of climate change campaigning which is happening. You probably all heard of Greta. We have in Scotland, we've got our own. We have Holly Gillibrand, who is a well-known Scottish school student who is a very active campaigner around climate change. But it's not just climate change campaigning that people can do. There's loads and loads and loads of examples of young people making kind of positive, direct impacts on climate change. And I'm just going to talk to you about a few of those now. So we're going to be going from Scotland, and we're going to be going all the way around the world to South Africa. And we are going to meet two young people, two friends actually. So we've got Tato, who you can see actually on the left, and then her friend Rhea, who I don't unfortunately have a photo of. But they have started a company called Repurposed School Bags. And what this company does is they take plastic bags which have either been thrown into landfill or thrown into the bin, and they recycle them. So they take them, they recycle them, they turn them into textiles. And then they use those textiles to make actual school bags, like you can see the two students holding there in the middle. And these school bags also have a built-in solar panel light. So students put on the bag when they're going to school and they're walking to school. And in South Africa, it tends to be quite sunny. It's much sunnier than it is over here. And whilst they're walking to school, that solar panel is getting loads and loads of sunlight and is charging up the light in that student's bag. And then when they get home, students can then use that light to help them study and in the dark. Because unfortunately, a lot of the students in the area where Tato and Rhea grow up, a lot of students don't have access to electricity all the time. It's quite often very dark at night because of that. But this school bag allows them to charge up a light when they're walking to school, and then when they get back and they need to do some work in the evening, they can use the energy that has been saved by that solar panel to light up their room. And this started off as a project between two friends, and now it's a full-time company which employs at least 8 people who work full-time making these school bags, which is just a really great thing. Okay, so we're going to hop back over the ocean somewhere a bit closer to home. We are going to now find ourselves in Ireland, and we're going to find ourselves with Fionn, who's now 20 years old. He's a scientist. He's also a big anti-plastic pollution campaigner and innovator. And he basically realized that there's lots of microplastics in our seas and our oceans. If you have a look at the middle image there, that's just some of the problems. So all of those little dots are basically bits of plastic floating around in the water. We don't want that because animals and plants might ingest them, they might eat them, and then that can make them very ill. So Fionn saw this problem and he thought, right, I'm going to do something about it. And he had many failed attempts. He actually almost burnt down his house when he was trying to solve this problem. He also caused a power cut in his local village, which I don't think necessarily won him any friends, but he persevered. He didn't let himself be deterred. And he basically ended up creating a device that used something like a magnet to extract, to remove those microplastics from the water. Now, just to put in context how small microplastics can be, that picture on the right, the long grey thing that's taking up most of that square, that's a human hair. So we really zoomed in really, really far into a human hair. Okay, and that's what a human hair looks like close up. Now, the little red circle in the bottom right of that image, that's the red blood cell, which you may have heard of. Red blood cells is what's in our blood, and it's what takes oxygen around our body to help keep us alive. And the tiny, tiny, tiny little blue dot to the left of that red blood cell, that is how small a microplastic can be. So it can be absolutely tiny. We can't see it with the naked eye. So it's really good that we've got people like Fionn, young people like Fionn, who are realizing the seriousness of this issue, and they're coming up with inventions which help remove these things from our oceans. He's done really well. Lots of people have been quite impressed with him. He also, in 2019, he was the grand prize global winner of the Google Science Fair. So the Google Science Fair is a big worldwide science fair which people put in lots of entries to from all around the world, and he put his entry in and he managed to win with this invention. So this is a really exciting thing to see. So now we're going to come even a bit closer to home. We're going to leave Ireland and we're going to head to mainland UK, and we're going to find ourselves in Wales. And we're going to find ourselves with Sky, who is a 11-year-old student from Wales, who, just like Fionn, noticed that on her coastal town there was a lot of plastic pollution. And she realised that actually quite a lot of that plastic pollution were the plastic toys that were given away for free in some of the magazines that her and her friends got. So things like you can see here on the right there. So lots of magazines, they come in plastic bags and they have lots of plastic toys in them. And she kind of realized that actually you get the plastic toy, you play with it for about a week and then you just throw it away, or you forget where it is and you lose it, and then a month later you find it, but you kind of lost interest with it, and again it just gets thrown away. And when we make these plastic things, we are using fossil fuels, oil in particular, to make it, and that means that we are releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And Sky thought, well, if I only use it for a week and then I throw it away, there's not really much point in having it. You know, it's not actually a very sustainable way of having something. So she has started to campaign to magazines successfully to get them not only to reduce the number of plastic toys which they are providing, which are then just going to be thrown away anyway, but also to try and reduce the amount of plastic packaging that the magazines are wrapped in. And she's doing really well, and it's another really great thing to see. So we're going to go from Sky now, and we're going to go to another 11-year-old student, and this is Otto. And Otto has come up with some clever tech to help combat the climate crisis. And his tech is he's made an app, and his app is called Upcycling Ideas. And what you do is you take your phone, okay, and you take a photo of something that you don't need anymore or that you're not going to use anymore. And then the app suggests things that you could turn that thing into to give it another life. So a really popular thing, or common thing that some people do, is that if you either take a bike tire or even a car tire, you can actually take that rubber when it's no longer needed, and you can turn that rubber into sandals. So with his app, people can now take things which they would otherwise be throwing away, and it might be going into landfill, it might be being burnt, and you can take a photo with your phone, and then the app can tell you what you might be able to turn that thing into, which is another really, really amazing thing. Okay, my final person who I'm going to talk about is Annabelle. Just like Fionn was a winner of an award, Annabelle is in she is in the BT Tech for Good competition, and she is a finalist in this competition, and she is working on quite a pretty clever idea actually. She's working on an idea where you could include tiny little mini wind turbines in the bodies of cars. So normally wind turbines are absolutely massive. Yeah, you can stand underneath them and you can see the massive blades going round and round. And we're not thinking that big. We're probably thinking much smaller. But what Annabelle has realised is that when a car is driving, if you were to stick your head out the window whilst a car's driving, you would feel the wind. And that wind, part of that wind is being created because the car's moving through the air quite quickly. And so Annabelle's idea is to include tiny little mini wind turbines in the car. So when the car is moving, those turbines are spinning and they're generating electricity. And then for an electric car, those turbines could then help charge the car battery. So that is a really, really clever idea. I'm not sure how far along she's got with that idea, but I think it's a really ingenious thing to be doing, and I really hope that that it can be taken further. So if you have been kind of inspired by some of those things that these young people are doing, then I think that you would be the perfect person to have a go at this thing that we're kind of sharing with you now. So my invention that will help the planet. Okay, and this is basically an invitation for you to put your thinking caps on and come up with an idea of an invention or even a campaign to solve a problem of the planet that matters to you. And you can either draw it or you can write about it, describe it in this box. And this is included in the resources that we're sharing with you. And it would be great to see any ideas that you have. So don't forget to share your ideas with us, either on social media or via email. We really would love to see them. Okay, I'm coming towards the end of my session with you, and I've just got two main things to talk about now. The first thing is what are schools doing? So we've looked at big organisations, we've looked at individual people. We're now going to see some really great examples of schools in Scotland and what they are doing. And the first school we're going to look at is Sunnyside Primary School. And this is a primary school with a really strong eco ethos. And they've run lots of successful campaigns. And a really successful one that they've done recently is called the Drain campaign, which kind of linked to what Sky and Fion are doing. They've realised how plastic waste in towns and cities can end up in our oceans. And so they've run this campaign called the Drain campaign, and they've managed to get dozens of primary and secondary schools involved to basically highlight this issue, to get people to start thinking about where they are putting their waste. And so they've created lots of amazing posters and drawings, which they've shared on social media. And one of the things that they've done really well is they've managed to get lots of outside people involved. So they've got organisations like Scottish Water involved. They've got Glasgow City Council involved. They've even got the Marine Conservation Society involved to support the campaign as well. And as you can see from the image, the First Minister has also been involved. And I just wanted to share this with you because I think not only is this really amazing, but it also shows actually the strength that student voices can have. Because this is a primary school which has managed to get all of these massive organisations and the leader of our country, the First Minister, involved in their campaigns. And I just think that's just a really amazing thing and a very empowering thing to realise actually the power that your voice can have. Okay, so we're going to go from Sunnyside Primary School now, and we are going to go to another primary school, which is Timewater Primary School. Okay, and this primary school have campaigned to the Muller Milk Company, who provide their milk, because they realised that they were getting a lot of plastic straws in their milk cartons, and they didn't want that. And they wanted to have paper straws, which are environmentally much better. And so they managed to successfully campaign to Muller to get them to stop sticking plastic straws onto these milk cartons and now provide paper straws. And they're now also campaigning them to try and reduce more plastic packaging on these milk cartons, which is really good. One final school that I want to talk about is now a high school, which is Boroughmuir High School. And what this high school have managed to do is they've introduced keep cups. And this was actually the Eco Committee who managed to introduce this into the school. And what they realised was there was a lot of single-use cups being produced and made and then thrown away. And so what they did was they brought in these keep cups, which students could buy at quite a low price. And then once they had the cup, when the students went to get their hot drink or their soup, they then managed to get those things at a cheaper price because they were using a keep cup. And this reduced the amount of waste which will be thrown, which was being thrown away. And this has been very successful for this school. I'm just aware of the time. I'm going to really motor on through the final section before I hand back to Jamie and Kat. So, well, but before I do that, I've got one more poll to share with you. So just based on what you've seen other schools do, I would like you to choose from the poll what you would like to do in your school. If the poll is taking a while to load up. Oh, there we go. So here we go. So what things would you like to do at your school? This is, you can choose as many answers from this as you would like. But you've seen some things some schools are doing. There are some other things that you could potentially do. So you could do a school campaign, you could reduce food waste, you could try and reduce plastic waste, you could try and increase active travel. So that means more cycling and walking, less driving. And you could also try and improve the biodiversity, so the amount of wildlife that you've got in your school grounds. So just have a think. I'm going to see what some of our answers are. Oh, lovely. We've got a nice even spread so far, which is really nice to see. I appreciate some of you are having to leave for assemblies, but thank you very much for joining us. And don't worry, this session is being recorded, so you will be able to look back at it at a later date. Got some really, really good responses here, and it's really great to see that lots of people are thinking about doing lots of different things. Dumbarton thinking about improving biodiversity. That's absolutely excellent. Yeah, really, really grand responses. Okay, so I'm gonna move on now, just because I'm aware of the time, and I'm just going to give you a few suggestions of other things that you could do as a school to combat the impact of climate change. Now, in my job normally, I'm going around lots of different schools and I'm teaching students about climate change. And one of the really amazing things about that is that I get to see all of the different things that schools are doing. And all of these suggestions that I'm going to share with you are things which schools have done, which I've seen. And so I'm just going to share some of these with you now. So as you learned kind of from your session with Eve, food waste is a massive issue. Especially when you have large kind of groups of people, so maybe in a school or an organisation where lots of amounts of food are being served every day, that issue can become bigger and bigger and bigger. And one school realised this. They realised that a lot of their food at lunchtime was being thrown away because students weren't eating it because they didn't want as much food as they were being served. So what they managed to do, they basically got the canteen to provide 2 sizes of plates. So there was the standard normal size, and then there was a slightly smaller size. And basically, depending on how hungry the students were, they could take which size plate they wanted. And this meant that if they weren't feeling as hungry as they were the day before or something, then they could take a smaller plate, and then that meant that they would be given less food, and then that meant that less food would be thrown away. So that's a really straightforward, simple thing that you could do if you've realised that you do have quite a bit of food waste in your school. Another thing that you could do is you could approach this charity called the Woodland Trust. They're a really amazing charity. If schools go to this charity, then they get given some trees which they can then plant in their school grounds, and those trees can remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So that's another really good thing that you can do. We just got a few more things left. I know that he's on a bit of a tight schedule, and he would love to say goodbye to you before he leaves. So we've got another school that I went to. They realised that they were having loads of plastic bottles being thrown away because people were buying more and more plastic bottles at lunchtime. So what they did was they installed a few more water fountains. Now, I appreciate in the current state that we're in now with the pandemic, having lots of people congregate around a water fountain probably isn't the best idea, but for future, they installed more water fountains, and then they gave new joiners to the school their own school water bottle, and then that meant that the students could refill their water bottles from the water fountains, and they weren't having to buy more and more plastic bottles of water every day. So they reduced their plastic waste that way. Another school, they managed to get their some parts of their school uniform made from recycled materials. Quite often they managed to get either their tie or their blazer made from recycled materials, which was a really good thing to see. And we've actually, in some of the resources that we're sharing with you, we have got some KSB videos which give examples of schools doing this. So when you get the resources pack, you'll be able to have a look at some of those videos, which could give you a bit of inspiration. Okay, 2 more things to run through. The penultimate thing is Meat-Free Monday, which is quite a common thing. You might have heard of it before. Lots of schools all over the UK and in Scotland are doing it, and that basically means on a Monday, the canteen doesn't serve any meat. And therefore, all of the greenhouse gases that are associated, like methane, with cows and sheep, then on that Monday, you're not having any of that. It's not getting rid of meat completely, yep, but it is saying that on a Monday we're not serving any meat, and this is a very common thing that lots of schools are starting to do. The final thing that you could do is repurposing or upcycling. So on the right there, that's an image of a tin of tomatoes that I had. When I'd eaten all of those tomatoes, I then realized I needed a pen pot. And so that tin of tomatoes sits on my desk and keeps all of my pens in. And so it is me repurposing that thing, and it hasn't been thrown away. I still use it now for something else. Okay. The one thing I will say though about repurposing is sometimes people repurpose things for art projects, which is nice to see, but if you're making an art project which you're then going to just throw in the waste later on, then that's not really in the spirit of repurposing. Repurposing or upcycling is changing something which you're then going to keep for a very long time and use for a long time. So it's worth bearing that in mind. There we go. These are all of the things that I've kind of run through. There's a few more things in that picture. You know, you could pass on your knowledge through a school assembly or something like that. But off the back of this kind of celebration of all the positive things in Scotland that are happening and things that are happening around the world, and we just really hope that you translate everything that you've learned this week into some positive class actions. And it's just amazing to see all of the suggestions that you're coming up with and all of the things that you're thinking about. It really is very, very inspiring for us all. And that's pretty much it from me. I think we've got Jamie here, and I think he might be going back to their office in Stirling where he is based. And that means that it's time for me to say thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the session. I'm going to hand back over to Jamie and Kat so they can say their final few words.
Thank you, Josh. That was amazing.
Thank you, Josh. That was a long trip.
Yeah, sorry.
You tired now, Jamie?
Yeah, just a wee bit.
Right, why don't you sit back and I'll show us a summary of what we've learned. Right. So first of all, we've had a couple more pictures come in just at the last minute. These are pictures of schools that are doing their One Planet picnics, and I can't resist showing them to you. So hold on. That's not doing what I wanted to do. Start the show. There we go. That's better. So you go, St. Margaret's Primary in Johnston. And P5B at Clyde Primary in Glasgow, all having their picnics today. And Garrow Hill Primary School as well. I'm loving the art and design on that wall, by the way. That's really cool. So what have we learned from all of our sessions? Some climate change does happen naturally. Whoa, stop, please. No, I'm having a bit of a technical glitch. Okay, well, there we go. Slideshow from current slide. Thank you. There we go. So some climate change does happen naturally, but human activity is causing it to happen faster and a lot more. It's a really good thing today's Friday, isn't it? Greenhouse gases cause climate change by causing the atmosphere to trap more warmth. These gases are produced by activities like flying, farming, generating electricity, food production, food and textile waste, landfill, and transporting goods. Next slide. Climate change affects wildlife, food, and the oceans through habitat loss, warming oceans, reduced food supplies for wildlife, changing growing seasons, rising sea levels, and more frequent wildfires, none of which sounds very good. Thinking about this can feel overwhelming. But like most big problems, it helps to know that we can all do something about it. We can all work together to take small steps at home and at school to tackle climate change. We can help tackle climate change by doing all of these things: choosing active travel whenever possible, eating lower carbon foods, cooking with fresh ingredients, planting for biodiversity, recycling and reusing as much as possible, asking decision makers to do their part, which is important because some of these things can only be solved by big companies and countries working together. And lastly, by passing the learning on to other people. I'd like to thank you very, very much for joining all of us this week. It's been an absolute pleasure being in your classrooms and teaching you all of the things that we know about climate change. So thank you so much for joining us, or for watching the recordings if that's what you're doing. We'd also like to say a huge thank you to our friends at Keep Wales Tidy, who run the EcoSchools programme in Wales, for inspiring us to create Climate Action Week in Scotland, because they have a similar programme in Wales and we saw it and thought it was absolutely amazing. And last but not least, thank you so much to our colleague Andrea for organising Climate Action Week and for being so inspiring. Andrea, turn your camera on and say hello.
Turn your
Don't be
camera
shy.
on.
There she is. Thank you so much. We have honestly had the absolute best time. So we'd like to thank you again for just being so amazing and coming to our lessons.
Thank you so much.
Please let us know what you think in the evaluation. Your feedback helps us to build better things.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hope you have a great weekend.
Bye.